dive into Mother Gothel, please, will you, Zach? Let's do this. I will show off stuff, and this is all you. And chat, just like we've done this before, if you have questions, pop them in the chat. Zach is just going to run through his strategies. I will stop him when I feel like it's a good time to do so, but I'm going to let Zach kind of run the show today. So here we go. Zach, take it over. Take it over, Zach.
Let's do this. All right. Welcome to the Mother Gothel deep dive. Now, Mother Gothel is one of the most interesting characters because she sort of has multiple different things she has to deal with at the same time. The way I like to look at it is Mother Gothel is playing two games at the same time. Most villains, you are playing your objective and you're trying to accomplish it before the other player achieves theirs, which is what's happening in this case. But Mother Gothel has little Rapunzel, who is just chilling in her realm the entire time, and she never leaves. And when Rapunzel is at Corona, Mother Gothel goes backwards towards her objective. Her objective is very straightforward. It is to gain 10 trust. You gain 10 trust, start your turn that way, you win the game. Sort of like Prince John, but Prince John just has to get straight old power. But with Gothel, we're introduced to a new type of currency, sort of like Poison with Evil Queen, that is trust. Gothel just needs to get 10 trust. And there are ways she can gain trust through her cards, which we will dive into in a second. However, every time she ends her turn, Rapunzel moves one location closer to Corona. And if at the end of her turn, Rapunzel is still there, Mother Gothel loses a trust. So, Mother Gothel is in essence playing two games at once. She is trying to gain trust with her cards, but she is trying to balance Rapunzel and keep her away from Corona so she doesn't lose trust. And I think the challenge, where I've seen a lot of people struggle with this character, is they just focus on the first game. And they just go to gain trust as fast as possible and do what they got to do. And then what happens is they're out of power, they're out of resources to move Rapunzel. She's sitting at Corona, and the trust just drips away while your opponent goes on to win the game. So, as I was saying, Mother Gothel is sort of playing two games at once. She's playing against her opponent's objective, but she's also playing against her own objective to mitigate Rapunzel not being at Corona, while at the same time trying to get trust and go towards her objective. So that is why Gothel can be a little bit tricky, especially for people who maybe haven't played as a lot or some newer players. But that's what we're here for, is to dive into the cards, dive into the character, and show you that with the right strategy, with the right approach, she can be super powerful. So Gothel's villain deck is laid out here. It is very consistent of effects, which we see a lot of the perfectly wretched characters. That's the way their deck kind of flops out, is we have 7 different effects with 2 copies of each. I love you most, Mother knows best, misdirection, now I'm the bad guy, revenge, let down your hair, what once was mine. Again, there's 2 copies of each of those effects. And we have just 3 items in her deck. However, these 3 items are very helpful for your objective: the knife, the crown, and especially the hairbrush. And of course, she has her 2 conditions, like every other villain, and she has her allies. She has 2 copies of her Stabbingtons, Sideburn Stabbington and Patchy Stabbington. Effectively do the same thing, just different names. The Royal Riders, again, 2 copies, who act sort of like a boarding party with Captain Hook, where they are able to vanquish at adjacent locations. And then she has 5 copies of her Royal Guards. So we'll dive into the allies in a minute. But to start with the effects, Mother Gothel has 4 different effects that allow her to gain trust. The most straightforward is I love you most. When I love you most is played, if Mother Gothel is at the same location as Rapunzel, because she is constantly moving around, you gain a trust. It costs 1 power to play, and if you're at the same location, you essentially trade that power for a trust. However, if Rapunzel, her tower, and you are also at that location with her, you get an extra trust. So this card is often most well utilized if you are at the tower. At the end game, if you just need to scrape by an extra trust or 2, or if you want to play it to get a trust, perfectly fine with that. But the best way to maximize this card, it's the only card in the game that lets you get 2 trusts from a single card. So I Love You Most is one of the 4 cards that let you gain trust. Misdirection allows you to move Rapunzel towards Corona, again, trading a power to gain a trust. This card has to be played really optimally because, again, you're giving yourself an advantage by getting one trust closer to your goal, but also a disadvantage by moving her towards Corona. So really only play this card if you are able to move Rapunzel back or you know it won't cause you any problems. I've seen a lot of people just play this as soon as they get it. If they have it in their first or second hand, they're just like, ooh, this card gives me a trust. I'm just going to play it and move her. Oh, I have a second copy. I'll play it again and move her again. And now she ends her turn. She still moves, regardless of how many times she moves at misdirection. And oh no, she's already at Corona. And what do? I'm going to lose that trust that I gained. So making sure when you're playing misdirection, again, it's a nice you just trade a power for a trust when you play it, but it will cost you an extra turn of Rapunzel moving a little bit faster. So know that you got to understand how to mitigate that. Next trust gaining card we have is Revenge. And Revenge is a card that lets you gain a trust if you defeat a hero other than Rapunzel. Now, we'll go into her fate deck in more detail later on, but Mother Gothel has 7 heroes in her fate deck, which is actually the fewest amount of heroes of any villain in Villainous so far. If you count 8, then she's tied, but this hero is always on the board. So within the fate deck, out of cards that your opponent can play, there's only 7 heroes. The rest are effects and 1 item. So if there is a hero in Mother Gothel's realm and you defeat it, let's say ally, there's an ally with enough strength to defeat that, you don't have to be at the location with the vanquish. You can be somewhere with the play a card action and use Revenge to not only vanquish, but gain you a trust to doing so. Revenge can be played to vanquish Rapunzel if necessary. However, you don't gain a trust by doing so. So keep in mind, Revenge is only if you defeat a hero other than Rapunzel. And I should have mentioned this earlier on, but when you do vanquish Rapunzel, what is unique about her is she never leaves the realm. Anytime she's vanquished, she immediately returns back to the tower. So she moves along. You have cards that can move her, which we'll get into in a second, but if she is vanquished, she goes straight back to the tower. So the 3 cards that let you gain trust: I Love You Most, Misdirection, and Revenge. But to finish out the last card that gets you trust, but also to start getting into cards that let you move Rapunzel, is Let Down Your Hair. Let Down Your Hair is a super versatile card. I think it's actually, I would say, is one of my favorite cards in the deck because it is so versatile. If Rapunzel is at the tower, again, you just trade the power, you play it for a trust. Free trust gain. However, if she is not, it gives you the option to move her up to 2 spaces towards the tower. So if she's at Corona and you know you're going to lose a trust, you have a power to play. Guess what? You can come to Corona, play a power. You can move her up to 2 spaces back, and you buy yourself 2 more turns. Now, the card does say up to. So if you were at the Snuggly Duckling and you wanted to play it, you could move her just 1 space. Or if you were, let's say, at Rapunzel's tower and you had an ally here that you wanted to vanquish with, you could play it, move just 1 space, then use your vanquish, and she would come all the way back here. So Let Down Your Hair is a super versatile card. It gets you a trust if you need it. Otherwise, it lets you move Rapunzel. Now, this is another card that I often tend to see played really early. If you have this in your opening hand, I'll often see players, oh, I have this in my hand. We'll go to the Snuggly Duckling and get 3 power and spend 1 to immediately get a trust. Or we'll go to the forest and we'll spend 1, play it to immediately get a trust. And again, that card, not only are you giving up an option, one of your best options to keep Rapunzel away from Corona, but now you've given yourself an early trust, which is easier for you to lose, which when we talk about the strategy, we'll get into why that may or may not be the best idea. Other cards that let you move Rapunzel is Now I'm the Bad Guy. It's sort of Rapunzel's reset card. I almost never play this card, but I sort of compare it to kind of like Beauty Sleep in Yzma's deck, where it is almost never played, but it can be very situational, where in certain circumstances, it can really help. Now I'm the Bad Guy is the only card in Mother Gothel's deck that costs no power to play. Everything else, other than the conditions, of course, cost at least 1. But Now I'm the Bad Guy is the only 0 power card. However, when it's played, Rapunzel, no matter where she is in the realm, immediately gets moved to the tower, and you lose a trust. Important thing to note about this card is it cannot be played if you have 0 trust. So it is not a free reset. If you're at 0 trust, you can't play it just to move her back. You have to be able to lose the trust in order to play the card. And so because it makes you lose that trust, it can be very situational, where if you know that you're getting close to win condition, but you're not going to be able to remember. You don't have the tools to remove Rapunzel. Maybe this is a good card where you can play it and you can lose a trust or reset, do what you got to do. But oftentimes there will be better ways to move Rapunzel. But that is a way that allows you to do so. Misdirection we already covered is another way to move Rapunzel. Again, it's moving towards Corona at the cost of a trust. And the final card actually doesn't move her, but it does the opposite. It allows you to not move her. Again, at the end of every turn, Rapunzel will move one turn closer to Corona. Mother Knows Best means that that does not happen. Sort of pay one power to not have to do that thing. So if Rapunzel's at the forest and you know next turn she's going to move to Corona and you're not going to have the resources to move her, you can play Mother Knows Best, which means she won't move there. You buy yourself an extra turn. Again, this is a card that I tend to not play most of the time, but it can be situational, where if you're in a situation where you need to take a turn, or let's say you wanted to go, let's say you have a hero here and you're here and you want to go fate, you need to go fate your opponent, but you know at the end of your turn, Rapunzel will move and you have to go vanquish her. If you play Mother Knows Best, you can buy yourself a turn to go here and fate, do what you got to do, discard, play, find a way to reset. Then at the end of that turn, Rapunzel will move. So it's a very strategy-heavy card where, again, just like Misdirection, you want to use it circumstantially where you know that you're using it in a way that makes the most sense to optimize your gameplay. So that is 6 of the 7 effects. Again, 4 of them deal with moving Rapunzel, and 4 of them deal with getting trust. The final effect, I put all the way over here, because it is the most versatile, is What Once Was Mine. Now, this card, if you get early, is basically you just discard it because you're not going to be able to utilize it. But What Once Was Mine allows you to choose any card from your discard pile and put it into your hand. And while I think people will often shrug away that card or they'll just use it if, oh, I got rid of the hairbrush, I need to get it back. This card is super valuable, especially when you have these combo locations that allow you to play more than one card at both the forest and the Snuggly Duckling. You have a good supply of power. You can spend 1 to play What Once Was Mine, take anything out of your discard pile, and then immediately play it. And there is not any other card that does exactly what that does. Parrot in Pete's deck is the closest thing. When you play it, it allows you to take something from your discard pile. The Devil Take It with Corella can take an item or effect. But this just straight up lets you take whatever you want. You can take a condition, you can take an ally, you can take an item, take an effect. And again, this is a card where you want to play it very situationally. A lot of times I'll see people just use it. Oh, I lost my hairbrush. It was discarded. So I'm just going to go get the brush back, which a lot of times that's what you want to do. But sometimes, hey, Rapunzel is at the tower. I have no way to get her back. I'm going to play What Once Was Mine and maybe let down your hair. Or I'm going to take an ally and have somebody vanquish her. Or let's say Rapunzel is here, getting ready to go to Corona. You have an ally with enough strength getting ready to vanquish her. Maybe I want to grab I Love You Most, so that next time at the end of my turn when she moves, I can come here, vanquish, play it to get that 2 trust and really maximize its ability. What Once Was Mine is super versatile, and that card really just is going to come down, again, it's situational. Based on where you're at and what you need, it allows you to just get it. So especially if these cards are at the end of your deck, they can be super helpful. That covers all 7 of the effects. I Love You Most, Misdirection, Revenge, Let Down Your Hair, Now I'm the Bad Guy, Mother Knows Best, and What Once Was Mine. Getting into the items, the only other ways, aside from these effects, for Mother Gothel to gain trust are her items. Now, the hairbrush is the fastest and most efficient way for Mother Gothel to gain a trust. As soon as it is played to her location, again, you're trading that power that you play for a trust. However, anytime it's moved to her location, you also get a trust. The hairbrush is the only way for you to spend no power and gain a trust. Rapunzel is here. Come to the forest. In your 2, play something, move the brush, get a free trust. Next turn, Rapunzel goes there, and you can come to the tower, move the brush, get another trust. Maybe if you have an ally here, you can vanquish her, sending her back to the tower. Do what you need to do. But the brush, every time it is moved to her location, you're able to get yourself a trust. So the brush is something you want to find and play really as fast as you can. However, just because you want to get it out and start gaining trust as soon as you can doesn't mean that it's as soon as it's in your hand, you want to play it. You want to be aware of playing it so that it doesn't get discarded. Aging is an effect. Again, we'll cover her fate deck in more detail in a bit, but aging is an effect that lets you discard an ally or item with cost of 2 or less. Other than the Stabbington brothers, who are cost 3, everything else in her deck costs 2 or less. So oftentimes aging is used to discard the brush. However, if you just have the brush out and somebody pulls an aging, well, what are they going to get rid of? The brush. But let's say you have the brush, but you also have the crown out, and you also have a 2-strength ally out, and you also have another ally who has a knife who's getting ready to vanquish Rapunzel. Then you make the opponent use some thinking, and they have to give some choices. So if you just put the brush out as soon as possible, it's going to be easily discarded by aging. So you want to play it, even though it's the fastest way for you to get trust, play it in a time that's most optimal for you to benefit from it. Next trust card is the crown. Now the crown, what it does is whatever location it's at, when a hero is defeated at its location, you have the choice to either gain 2 power or discard the crown to gain a trust. And another mistake I often see people making with the crown is they'll just use it to get trust immediately. Let's say Hook Hand is at Corona. We have an ally here. Maybe we played a revenge, or maybe we've just vanquished. But they will say, all right, Hook Hand's gone, and hey, free trust from the crown. And the reason that's a mistake is Mother Gothel often tends to struggle with power, especially if she's trying to be defensive. Notice if you have Hook Hand, or let's say an ally at Corona, there is no way for her to fate and play cards. If she needs to be defensive and fate her opponent, and there's a hero here, there's no way for her to gain power while she's fating. She can come here and get some power, but if she's playing 1 or 2 cards, that power is not going to last long. And again, all of her deck, except for now and the bad guy, costs at least 1 power to play. So in the end game, when you find yourself really starved for power, and that's often where people struggle with playing Gothel, is they'll do really good at first because she has some good tools to start getting trust. And then at the end, you're in a situation where you have no power, but your opponent's getting ahead and you need to fate them. And I need to fate them again, but I can't make any progress and I can't do anything to move Rapunzel. She just keeps creeping towards Corona, but I need to fate my opponent, and nothing happens. And then your trust just starts dripping away. And this is the worst situation to be in as Gothel. And we often say that, Hakuna Matata cycle for Scar is just really brutal, but I'd say this is up there with Gothel, as you are having no power, can play nothing. Your opponent's getting closer and closer while you're getting further and further as your trust just keeps dripping away while you have no power to play anything.
I have to step in and say that Hakuna Matata is the absolute bane of my existence, and that nothing will ever beat the Hakuna Matata Cyclone. You may now continue.
I don't know that it's worse than the Hakuna Matata Cyclone, because I agree. It can become the bane of your existence, but this gets pretty bad. Because just like Hakuna, you're going backwards in your objective. Hakuna is resurrecting a hero that you have to then redefeat. It's reducing the strength in your succession pile, which is your win condition. Same thing. If you have no power to play anything, your trust is just slowly dripping away. The reason that this might actually be worse, though, is Hakuna Matata only takes heroes of 3 or less out of the pile. So if you have Mufasa and Simba, you're always at 11 strength no matter what. This will just keep dripping away until you're at 0. Doesn't matter how close you are, everything goes away if you can't do anything to mitigate her. Which is why using the crown to gain power early on is much more valuable, because in the end game, that power will become much more valuable. One rule of thumb that I tend to play by that I found works really well for me is I will always gain power from the crown unless I am either at more than 7 or 8 trust, or if I am within 2 or 3 turns from getting to 10. If that crown is going to get me to the final bump of getting me where I need to be, then I will most certainly get rid of it and take the trust. But because you have to discard it and it's just a one-time item, it is usually much more valuable to take the power from the crown. As far as where you place the crown, with the brush, where you place it won't really matter because you're going to move it around anyway. It's going to follow Rapunzel and get you trust. Where you place the crown, I often find that the best 2 locations for the crown is obviously where heroes are going to be placed the most often, where if you're getting fated a lot, chances are heroes are going to be put in Rapunzel's tower to try to block your top fate, block you from being able to move that brush. So if you have the crown here, Every time you vanquish a hero, you're allowing yourself to get trust, or power rather, and then trust if you need it. The other spot, if you know your opponent's not fading you that much, or let's say they're not worried about covering the tower because you don't have the brush, the other place I find most valuable is Corona. Because even if people aren't playing heroes and you're not too worried about defeating people, you're still going to defeat Rapunzel no matter what. And typically you're defeating her when she's at Corona, and you need to defeat her or move her or lose a trust. So if the crown is here, every time you go here to vanquish Rapunzel and move her back to the tower, you're netting yourself 2 power or that trust towards the end game that will help. So oftentimes, crown will often be played at one of the locations on the corners. Now, again, if you're in a situation where it's end game and you have maybe Flynn out, who has stolen 2 trust, which we'll get into when we get into heroes in more depth, but let's say Flynn is out, he's stolen 2, and you know that when you defeat him, you'll get 2 back. If you have the crown at his location, that way you know as soon as you defeat him, you could discard it to get another trust and get even closer. If you played revenge to take him out, and hey, maybe you've now gotten to 9 and you're already super close. An additional reason to have it at the corners, though, is it's easy to move. And you have your 2 move actions. So let's say that the crown is here at the tower, and someone's like, oh, I don't want to play Flynn where the crown is. I'm going to put him there. There's an ally over at Corona. Come to the tower. If that location is free, you can move the crown and then play the vanquish and still utilize it. So to me, I find the crown is most beneficial at the corners. The other item that allows you to get trust is not as versatile as the crown. So the crown, again, gives you power. However, the knife is a one-time effect. So when it's played, it gets attached to an ally. We'll cover the allies in just a second. But when it is attached to an ally, when that ally is used to defeat Rapunzel, you gain a trust. Now, it's the opposite of revenge. Revenge says when revenge is used to defeat a hero other than Rapunzel, you get a trust. If it's used to defeat Rapunzel, you get nothing. The knife can be used to defeat another hero. You just don't get trust from it. But typically, the knife is best played on an ally that is sitting at Corona. Maybe the Royal Riders are here that give you adjacent locations, or the Stabbington. You can put it on the Stabbington so that when he kills Rapunzel, you get a trust. You can put it on the Royal Rider so that now the rider has enough strength to kill Rapunzel, and you can get a trust. But you typically want to play it on an ally that is going to be able to kill Rapunzel. Again, if you need to, and you're in this situational case where, let's say you have Flynn out and you're close and you need to kill him to get the trust back, you have a Royal Guard here, maybe you go to the tower and you play the knife. Now the guard is strong enough to kill Flynn. You don't get the trust from the knife, but you now are able to kill him faster and get your trust back. So situationally, you could use it on somebody who's not Rapunzel, but if you want to use it to gain trust, that is how it is best played. So those are your primary ways to gain trust. Those 7 cards right here are really the only way for you to get trust. The crown, the brush, the knife, let down your hair, revenge, misdirection. Again, Love You Most is the only card that lets you get more than 1 trust as soon as you play it. Misdirection, revenge, let down your hair. You play it once and you get a trust. You're trading the power for a trust. The crown and knife, once they're discarded from your realm, they give you a trust. The brush is the item that just can net you trust as soon as you move it. So the brush is the only 0 cost way for you to gain trust, which again is why it's so helpful to have the brush out, to be able to move it around. And what I will say is a few strategies on how to use these items before we hop into covering the allies is if you are in a situation where you are at a move location and you have the brush and you have a card that lets you gain trust. Let's say you could, actually, let's say we're in this situation. We're here. Rapunzel's here. The brush is here. Or no, that's what I was thinking. Yep, I was right with the other situation. Yep, retcon. If you're here and you're thinking that you could either play misdirection to get a trust, or you could move the brush to get a trust, obviously in this situation, you could do both. You could play it and then you could move it and then play it. But if you're in a situation where it comes down to you can play a card to get trust, or you can move the brush to get trust, or let's say you're in a situation where you have a rider, a Royal Rider out, and you want to use it to move Rapunzel or move another hero, which we'll dive into in a second, but you also have the option to move the brush, A lot of times it can be more valuable to use the brush and just gain that free move action that costs you no power, get that extra trust, rather than spending a power to have to do it. If you're in a situation where you can do both, and by all means, go here, move the brush, get a trust, then play misdirection to get another one. Just make sure you have a way that you can mitigate Rapunzel at Corona. Speaking of the brush and misdirection, again, the brush gives you a trust whenever it's played and whenever it's moved. One way that you're able to do both of those in one turn is if you have both of these in your hand. Let's say you're in a situation where, let's say this is the beginning of the game, and you have these cards in your hand. You go to the forest, you get your 2 power, you can play the brush, get a trust, and then you can play misdirection, which lets you move Rapunzel and get a trust. And now, hey, you still haven't moved anything this turn, so even though you already played the brush on this turn, you can move it now to get 3 trust. 2 power gained you 3 trust in that one turn. However, then Rapunzel moves here at the end of your turn, and then she's 1 turn away from Corona. You have no power, so make sure you have cards in your hand, or ways that she's just not going to sit here, and that trust is just going to slowly drip away. So the hairbrush misdirection combo is a good way to get 3 trusts in a single turn if you're at the forest, and you can use that combo spot well. As far as any other combos go, if you have 2 let down your hairs, you can play, and you're really needing to get trust at the end of the game, go here. You could spend 1 to play it, move her to the tower, and then spend another 1 to play it to get a trust if she's there. That is pretty low that it would happen if you'd have them both in your hand. But if you need to get that trust towards the end of the game, that's another way you can do it. Also, keeping in mind, let down your hair in the brush. Knowing that let down your hair lets you move her up to 2 spaces back. I've had situations where Rapunzel's here, the brush is here, and let's say I go to the forest or even the tower. I want to go Fate, and then I can move and I can play, and I don't have somebody to vanquish. I could play let down your hair and move her back the 2 spaces, but because it says up to, I could play it and move her back 1 space, and then she's in hairbrush range where I can move it and use the brush to get a trust. So just because let down your hair lets you move up to 2 spaces, don't be afraid to utilize it to move her back only 1, if that can give you an opportunity to have a brush that you can move. Or I've been in situations where I have an ally here, and you can move her back just 1 instead of 2, and then vanquish her, bring her back, do what you got to do. Especially if the crown is there perhaps as well. Then you're in a situation where you're maximizing your situation, not fully taking advantage of the card. But that's sometimes the game of Villainous, is you have to understand how you want to play the cards to your advantage and not just to the full advantage of the card text. Sometimes only using part of its ability, if it's allowed, such as using 1 instead of 2 spaces, can be helpful. Or there are times, like another villain, for example, Hades, maybe moving a Titan backwards will actually give you a situation where you could use Pyros to untrap somebody or Lythos to vanquish somebody. Sometimes you take 1 step back to take 2 steps forward, kind of like a tango. So you understand the way to maximize some of those combos. The last thing we haven't covered is the allies. So again, Rapunzel has 5 copies of the Royal Guard. Royal Guards are unlike any other ally in the game, is that the Royal Guards allow you to turn a move ally action into a move hero action. Anytime a Royal Guard is at a hero's location, say you go to the forest, you have 2, you spend 1 on a Royal Guard. Whenever a Royal Guard is moved, you can move a hero from its previous location to its new location. So if a Royal Guard is here, you use the move action. If you want, it's always a may, so you have the choice, but you can move the guard, who will then move Rapunzel with it. The Royal Guard is often used on Rapunzel to keep her away from Corona. Go to the tower, she goes here. Oh, you have another guard in your hand? Sure. You could either move this one back, or you also have the option, if you don't want to move it back, you can move this one in her direction and then vanquish because you have enough strength. Rapunzel is 4 strength, so a Royal Guard, 2 Royal Guards, or a Royal Guard and any other ally, or a Royal Guard with a knife will be enough to vanquish Rapunzel. Now, Royal Guards can also be moved to used to move other heroes. Oftentimes they're moved to keep Rapunzel away from Corona, and give you an extra sort of action that Let Down Your Hair would do by moving her away. However, let's say your opponent fates you and they bring out Maximus. And Maximus is a 3-strength hero, and so the guard's not going to be enough to defeat him on its own. What you could do, and let's say they put him at the tower, but you have the brush out and you want to be able to fate your opponent. So what you do, Rapunzel's here perhaps, you play the guard to the tower, you get your 2, spend 1, then you can move the guard to move Maximus into the Snuggly Duckling. And just like that, you've turned him into a move hero action to free up your top fate location. And now I will often utilize this strategy, especially if I don't have enough resources to kill people frequently, especially if somebody like Maximus, Queen and King, and Flynn that have 3 or 4 strength that are tougher to defeat, and I don't think I'm going to defeat them within a couple of turns, I will often play a guard there, move it. Now I already have half of the strength to get ready to defeat them in the future. Maybe I could play another ally and combo with a revenge if I have it or if I know it's coming up. But you also can free up your spaces. So the Royal Guards, and again, you have 5 of those Royal Guards. Other than the bandits in Pete's realm, he has 7, and the hyenas in Scar's realm, Hungry Hyenas, he has 6. I don't think any other villain has more of a single type of ally than Mother Gothel with 5 of her Royal Guards. So use them to your advantage to move Rapunzel, use them to protect the tower, and use them to shuffle around heroes, keep your most valuable spots open. Now, keeping in mind, because they can move Rapunzel, one thing that's super important with Gothel's gameplay is, I think what Jonesy referred to before as positioning. You think about where you want to position the guards. Most villains, you're just going to position where you want to kill. Sure, Royal Guard is going to go here because I want to protect the tower, or I want to protect Corona, so I'm going to go here. What you want to do with your guards is position them in a way where not only you think you might want to vanquish, but where you might want to move as well. And if you can set up a combo to think about keeping somebody in a position where you can gain that move and then position them into a space where you can vanquish, that makes it even better. If I have a Royal Guard in my opening hand, I will often play it to the Snuggly Duckling. Why? People aren't typically going to play to the Snuggly Duckling. They're going to want to typically go for one of these fate spots, especially because I can still play a card to get my power discard anyway. Because if my first turn, let's say I go to the Snuggly Duckling, get some power, and play the Royal Guard. And the end of my turn, Rapunzel moves. What I can do is, let's say I come to the forest or Rapunzel's tower. I can go here, get 2 power, play some more stuff, and then move the Royal Guard, move her back to the tower, where she then is in position to gain trust from one of these 2 cards. Or if you're in that same situation and you have a power, you can go to Rapunzel's tower, you can get a fade in on your opponent, and then you move the guard. And then look at that. Rapunzel's already at Rapunzel's tower. You can play I Love You Most to get 2 trust. And that's a pretty big swing of a turn. You've gained 2 trust with 1 power. You've moved Rapunzel back a space away from Corona, and you faded your opponent. And if you have another hero out, you have that vanquish option as well too. So using the guards to move Rapunzel or move heroes not only can keep some of your most valuable spots clear, but they can also position you in a way where you are then able to keep Rapunzel at bay and set it up to combo with some good cards. Or again, if you're here, get 2 power, you can move her back. Let's say you don't have I Love You Most, but you have Let Down Your Hair, and you can then play Let Down Your Hair. Or let's say you don't have Let Down Your Hair. Let's say Rapunzel's here, and you have Misdirection. You can play Misdirection, move Rapunzel towards Corona, and the guard says, just kidding, you're going to go right back to the tower. You just negated the negative effect of Misdirection by misdirecting Rapunzel right into the waiting move action of a Royal Guard. So use the guards, and the last thing I'll say is with that is if you use the guard to move Rapunzel, not only are you taking advantage of saving a free action to move Rapunzel away from Corona, but then you're positioning the guard in a spot where you know you're going to want them. If at the end of the turn, Rapunzel moves back 1 space, but then an opponent fates you and puts an ally here, well, look at that. Your positioning of the guard from moving Rapunzel now positioned him in a place where he's ready to defend one of your better locations. Just go here. Oh, hey, I can just vanquish him. He's gone already. So keeping in mind, the Royal Guards are super versatile, letting you move Rapunzel, letting you move heroes, positioning you to set up certain combos, and they can just kill a majority of the heroes, if not with one of them, if at least two of them.
So before
Two
you
royal
continue,
guards can kill any hero.
I do want to point this out really fast. So I've played against your Gothel. I've played against other folks who have been playing Gothel like this, and that strategy alone immediately makes me as the opponent playing against Gothel have to think about where I'm fading and how I'm putting my cards. Because the thing, and I've talked about this many times in Villainous, is you never want to. Oh, there you go. I had to fix that for a second. You never want to make it so there's only one decision the opponent has to make. Like when they draw two cards, they immediately know where they're going to put that hero or use that effect. When using the guards like that to position, it's making me as the opponent have to think. And on top of that too, you've already touched about this on like the power usage and the way to gain more trust in different ways outside of the brush. I think that's super important. The fact that now misdirection becomes useful because you're not actually halting yourself. Because, like you said, you're playing against yourself at the same time. And I think placing those royal guards out there like that is very good. I honestly think if anyone were to take anything away from this guide right here, that is the one thing. Like I've seen this done to me, and I'm like, oh crap, I have to think now. So, shout outs to you
Yep.
for saying that because it's great. It's an absolutely
And
fantastic
it's
tactic.
counter to most Villainous gameplay. Most Villainous, you just want to put your allies where you want to vanquish.
Yep,
Just play them there and
exactly.
don't think twice.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe with Scar, you want to think about putting them in a situation where then you can stampede it and move it over and kill it. But
Exactly.
otherwise, most villains, oh, where's the ally? Where's the hero? Just play it to that location. Gothel has to do a little bit of thinking. She has to think about not only where am I going to have heroes that are going to want to die, but where can I position them in a way where, hey, I can move Rapunzel here to move back and take advantage of an effect. Or I can keep a guard at Corona, and let's say I'm in a situation where I have no power, I need to fate. I can't move Rapunzel back because I don't have any power to play anything. Oh, wait, I can move her back with the Royal Guard, buy me an extra turn. Maybe next turn, you can go here and then get the power to play something. So it gives you versatility. And then the other thing is that what I will mention is in combination with the crown. The reason that crown is often going to be put at the corners is because that's where heroes are going to be played. What I will often do, if I manage it, is let's say I have Shorty is sitting here in the forest, and I have Royal Guard here, and I'm going to come to the tower, and I'm just going to vanquish Shorty. Instead of just vanquishing Shorty, if I don't have the brush I want to move, why would I vanquish Shorty here if I can use the Royal Guard? Hey, Shorty, do you want to just move into the Crown's territory, then vanquish him, and you can gain your 2 power or even a trust if you're at endgame situation where you're getting close, using the Royal Guards to not only mitigate Rapunzel, not only move heroes around, but moving them into the Crown, and that's why having them at the corners can help. Same thing, if you're in a situation here, you have a guard here, Flynn is here. Oh, look, Flynn is going to move right into the crown and my other ally, and he's going to die. So using the guards to take advantage of the crown, the guards can help you with so many combos. They can help you with the crown. They can move you so the next turn you're closer to the brush. They can move you to take advantage of all of your effects to get trust. Or same thing, if you're in the forest and you have a hero covering it, you can again move it and then play a revenge instead of vanquishing it, whatever it might be. Guards are super versatile. So, and there are 5 of them. So you have a lot of them. So don't be afraid to play them. Don't be afraid to keep them out. Don't be afraid to position them, not just where you think heroes will be, but where you think you want to shuffle around heroes and or Rapunzel. The other 2 allies in her deck, she has 2 copies of these Royal Riders. Now, as I briefly mentioned earlier, the Royal Riders are like boarding parties. They give you the ability to vanquish at an adjacent location. So if the Royal Riders, you don't want to play them in the corner because there's no locations here. This Royal Rider can reach the tower and the Snuggly Duckling. You put him here, can reach the Duckling and the tower and the forest. Same thing. This can only reach Corona and the forest. Put him here. Now he can reach the forest, the Snuggly Duckling, and Corona. So you always want to play the Royal Rider to either the forest or the Snuggly Duckling. And again, the Royal Rider is a strength of 3, so they can take out just about any hero other than the Queen and King and Flynn, and of course Rapunzel. However, if you give the Royal Guard a knife, anybody can be defeated, no matter where they are. So the Royal Riders, they are more expensive. They do cost 2 costs for a 3 strength ally, and you only have 2 copies of them. So if you have plenty of guards out and you don't need them, don't be afraid to discard them. But if you're not getting your guards and you have a Royal Rider out, then maybe play one here if you're getting faded a lot so that you can cover any of these spots, or if you know you're going to get ready to kill Rapunzel, you can put one here so that either you wait for the knife, you wait for another guard that you can then play, and this is 5 strength. It's enough to vanquish Rapunzel. It's 3 can reach Corona and 2. So keeping them out. The guards are more, or the Royal Riders rather, is what I would call preparatory allies. Is you're not always using them to just go play and vanquish right away, but you're using them to give yourself situations where someone comes here and puts a hero here to block it. Oh, I have an ally waiting and ready to kill it, so that's not going to bother me. If you're just going to go play something and kill, oftentimes you'll use a Royal Guard, but the Royal Riders give you options. And again, like we talked about of forcing people to make decisions, the Royal Riders are the only 2-cost card in your whole deck. And if a Royal Rider is out, along with a hairbrush, again, that's a situation where, let's say the brush is here with the Royal Rider, and Rapunzel's here, and your opponent knows that you're about to go to Rapunzel's tower and vanquish the Rapunzel with the Royal Rider. The brush is really tempting to get rid of, but now also this 2-card ally is tempting as well. And even though they got rid of your ally, you can then maybe go here and still move Rapunzel, keep him a turn away, and you still have the brush that you can utilize to gain trust. So keeping the Royal Riders out are, on one hand, they become aging bait. On the other hand, they just give you versatility for killing heroes, and they also just give you options to vanquish Rapunzel. So again, you only have 2 of them, but they can be really helpful, especially because of their versatility of reaching adjacent locations. The other 2 allies are the most expensive card in Rapunzel's deck are the Stabbington twins, Patchy and Sideburn Stabbington. And their ability is really special because whenever they are played to Rapunzel's location, she immediately moves to the tower, no matter where she is. Because it's a Snuggly Duckling, the forest, Corona, doesn't matter. You play, you go here, you get 3 power, you spend it all in a Stabbington, yoink, she's immediately in the tower. And that buys you at least another couple turns. And then the nice thing is if the Stabbington's at Corona, Rapunzel comes back over here eventually. Oh, look, now you have an ally with 5 strength who is strong enough to vanquish her. Vanquish her, oh, she's just yoinked back again. So the Stabbington will essentially give you 2 times where you can send Rapunzel straight back to her tower. Once when they're played, and once when you vanquish. And again, keeping in mind where if you have Stabbington here, Rapunzel here, you can vanquish, and then you're at the position where Rapunzel's at the tower. If you have a copy of I Love You Most, she's at the tower now, and you can gain your 2 trust from it, really maximize that card. So the Stabbingtons, again, are the most expensive card in the deck. They do cost 3 power. So that's when a situation where, let's say you need to go Fate, but you don't have a lot of money right now, you can't play them. You have to take a turn where you can't Fate your opponent to get enough money to play it. But if you were gaining power from the crown earlier and you gave yourself a little extra resources, oh, look, I can go to the forest. I can spend all 3 of my power on a Stabbington, move Rapunzel back. Then I can free up these actions and get 1, can discard some stuff, and then I can also Fate. So that's one of the reasons that power can be really helpful is because these cards can do a lot of work for you, giving you not just 1 immediate, but also a secondary impending way to move Rapunzel straight back to her tower. Again, these cards are very situational where you want to make sure you're taking advantage of using them when you can. Again, if Rapunzel's here, sometimes you could play it to the forest and move it back. At the end of the game, if let's say you've already used the Stabbington, you still have 1 in your hand, but you know that you're at like 8 trust, or let's say you're at 7 trust, and we have Flynn Rider is out here. Maybe instead of playing the Stabbington to Rapunzel's location, you could just play the Stabbington to Flynn's location. And that way, you know, next turn you're able to vanquish him, just immediately get your 2 trust back, and then you're almost at win condition. Then next turn, Rapunzel moves here, and you're able to vanquish shortly. Not if you're at this location. But again, revenge could vanquish, not give you the trust. But
We
you
get
get
the
the
idea.
idea.
We get the
Or if you're at the forest, Rapunzel's here, Flynn is here. Play the snuggly duckling, or play sideburns to the duckling, move Rapunzel back, then use your move. Move sideburns right into Flynn territory to get ready to kill him. So oftentimes you're going to want to use the stabbing tins to move Rapunzel back to her tower, but towards the end, maybe it'll be helpful to kill a hero, especially if you know you have a revenge in your hand or coming up. You can then utilize to combine with the stabbing tin. Play him to Flynn's location, play a revenge. You just got yourself 3 trust. The last card that I mentioned briefly with the effects was what once was mine. And again, it's sometimes going to be used. A lot of times I see it used to get back the hairbrush or maybe get back revenge if you want to kill somebody. But it's versatile. You can use it to take back a stabbing tin. You can use it to take back a guard. You could use it to take back the crown or the knife. Misdirection. It just gives you so many options. So you got to be situational. You have to understand what you're planning out, what you're thinking you're trying to do, and use it, again, most likely in one of these combo situations where you can allow yourself to maximize its ability. You get something and you immediately play it. Last 2 cards in her villain deck are her conditions. Again, every villain has 2 conditions that they play. One of the conditions allows you to straight up just move Rapunzel back to the tower. Doesn't matter where she is. If somebody moves an item or an ally, and if you're playing with a perfectly wretched character, Cruella or Pete, chances are they're going to be moving allies or items a lot. Other characters who move a lot, Scar moves a decent amount. Yzma can tend to move Kronk or an ally. Radigan's obviously moving the queen, sometimes ruffians. Keep in mind, Egomania will not trigger if it is not an item or ally. So if Hades moves a Titan, doesn't count. If Maleficent moves a curse, doesn't count. But if an opponent moves an ally or an item, wherever Rapunzel is, she just yoinks back right to the tower. And I will say this card, generally, yes, if somebody moves it, you just want to play it. But keep in mind, there are situations where you might not want to play it. If Rapunzel's here, and you just fated your opponent, but you know you need to fate them and win again, if you play Egomania, move Rapunzel back to the tower, you just blocked your own fate location and you cost yourself the game. So maybe don't play it in that circumstance. Or if you have Rapunzel here, you have a Stabbington here, a Let Down Love You Most in your hand, and you know next turn I'm just going to come over here and vanquish her and get that 2 trust that I need, probably don't want to play it because then you just ruin that setup that you gave yourself. Better to hold on to it, and then as she moves, you can use it to move again, especially if you've used this vanquish. So typically Egomania is great to play, but again, it's situational. All her cards are situational. Play it if it's beneficial to you. Even if the effect seems like it will help, make sure you're only letting it trigger if it will only help.
If
The
you
last
may, let me
condition
jump
is
in really
duplicity.
fast. One thing to keep in mind about Egomania and all the perfectly wretched move cards is that it's not just villain allies and items. It can also be fate items. So, weird example, if you're with Scar, let's say you use Stampede to move a hero that's got prophecy or a stick on it. You can trigger Egomania. So you can look out for those situations too when playing those cards, because those situations count. So
Correct.
find the time,
And
play it.
And I will say, if the one item in Gothel's Fate deck is a frying pan, and if somebody fates you and plays floating lights to move Rapunzel with the frying pan, that does count as moving an item.
Bingo.
Because on their turn, they moved an item. So you say you move me to Corona, well, I play Egomania and move you right back to the tower. So yeah, so if you're playing against like Scar has a prophecy to vanquish, or Ursula, every hero is going to have a binding contract that's about to die. So as soon as they die, they've moved an item. So yes, keeping in mind that it can also trigger on fate allies or items as well. No, there's no fate allies, but fate items. You get what I'm saying. We're getting into some Marvel territory.
Yeah, Marvel, baby. Wrong
right.
game.
Wrong game. The last condition is duplicity. And all of the perfectly wretched characters, Mother Gothel, Pete, and Cruella, all have a condition that allows you to vanquish another hero, or defeat another hero, rather, with a strength of 3 or less if your opponent defeats a hero with strength 3 or more. Cruella has the same card called Devilish with the same effect. With Pete, it's Outrage, which triggers like Egomania. When an ally or item is moved, he gets to defeat a hero 3 or less. Duplicity can come in handy, especially because 5 of her 7 heroes in her fate deck are 3 or less. So duplicity can trigger against almost all of these heroes. Now keep in mind, duplicity can be in a situation where you can free up a certain location. So let's say you have Hook Hand here, Wolf here. You need to go fate your opponent, and let's say Scar has killed his final hero to get back to 15 strength. Oh, look, I just played duplicity and killed the hero to open up the location. You do get the choice. You don't get to kill both of them, but you can pick which hero you want to defeat. And of course, you want to pick the one that will allow you to utilize the location you really want to make sure is uncovered. One of the things I will say about duplicity, and this is a sort of next level Gothel play that I sort of have discovered,
I'm ready.
is duplicity is the one way for you to gain a trust off of your turn. If you are at 9 trust and Pascal is here, so is the crown. Somebody defeats a hero, you play duplicity. Duplicity says defeat a hero. The crown says when a hero is defeated. Someone goes and vanquishes to get to their win condition. You play duplicity, defeat a hero, discard the crown to get your 10th trust. If they can't fate you, you've just won the game. Duplicity is the one way to get trust off of your turn. Again, typically if it's earlier in the game and you don't have as much trust, you're just going to use it to get power anyway. But if you need to, if you're towards the end of the game, you're at 7, 8, or even especially 9, just use duplicity to activate the crown, get one step closer, then a turn or two, you get to 10. So that's getting real sneaky with the gameplay, but that is the one way that you can get trust off of your turn, is combining duplicity with the hero that is at the crown's location. And that covers her whole villain deck. Before we jump into the fate deck, I don't know if Jonesy, there's anything you wanted to add, or if the chat had any questions about her villain cards or her villain deck specifically.
Chat, post up your questions now. What I do have to say is that I have called this a little bit since day one. The reason why I really like Gothel, and this is also a little bit why I like Hades. For those of you who play or have played like Root, you'll know that my favorite faction is the Eerie. And the reason for it is that I'm a huge fan of programming style games. And what makes Gothel a programming style character is the fact that literally, since Rapunzel has to move at the end of each turn, that makes her a programming style character, and the ways that you have to make decisions to keep that system going. And I think the thing I always struggle with Rapunzel is the fact that how do you balance that? Because you said this perfectly at the beginning of this, where people focus way too much on building trust. I've done this too. And they don't focus on the other half of it, where it's also managing Rapunzel. Because if you're managing Rapunzel and gaining trust at the same time, that's when you start to hit the sweet spot. Because I think, especially when we were early talking about Gothel, we're talking about these big trust swings and trying to do things like that. But in reality, you shouldn't really be focusing on that. It very much seems like you need to be focusing on building your engine to allow yourself to work around when Rapunzel's getting moved, so you don't have to worry about those situations. Because what happens is that you spend all your money to get some cards out, but you don't have any defense ready. And then when you don't have any defense ready, when Rapunzel gets to Corona, you're scrounging to try to get something to work. And then you probably get faded, or you can't play defense against your opponent back. Because that's the biggest thing I found, is that I get myself in positions where I can do things, but I get, some fake cards. I don't have cards in my hand to get rid of stuff. When I have not personally played this way yet as Mother Gothel, because I've been playing with a certain Sea Witch, which we'll try not to mention too much in this video. But what is it? What I've seen with people like yourself and other players taking the strategy with Mother Gothel, that works. That forces me as the opponent to have to make decisions when I am fading, to now where it's like what you're talking about with like having the Royal Guard with the rider, with the knife and the brush and all that stuff. Stuff like aging is no longer, all right, we're just going to get rid of the hairbrush, stuff like that. It's like when I talked about with Hades, where it's like, all right, if you make it, there's situations where you don't want to just get rid of Chariot, and there's other things to get rid of and good reasons to do so. You're making them make decisions, and that's what you want to do with any of these characters. And I think you really nailed it on the head with how to do stuff. And I will tell you this up front. Take the crown power gaining thing seriously because, oh my God, does that make a hell of a difference? It really does. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
All right. And we had a question from Purple Potato in the
Yes, we do.
chat who asked a great question. He said, what happens if you play Mother Knows Best at Corona? The easiest way to say it is you're just wasting a power. Nothing happens.
Right.
If at the end of your turn, if Rapunzel is still at Corona, you lose a trust. Mother Knows Best means you don't move her, but you're not going to move her if she's at Corona anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I've seen is that
expensive
it's a weird turn order of operations thing where I've seen people like use a royal guard or a let down your hair, and for whatever reason they play Mother Knows Best first, and then they'll move her back a space. So that doesn't affect your ability to move her backwards, but it just affects her ability to move Rapunzel at the end of the turn. So there's really no point of trying to play that card if she's already at Corona. I mean, worst case scenario, you're just trying to chuck cards out of your hand. And that is like super emergency level stuff. I wouldn't normally do that.
Well, keep in mind, Mother Knows Best says at the end of your turn, don't move her. So whatever order you play this, if you play Mother Knows Best and then let down your hair, she's still not going to move.
Right.
If you play Let Down Your Hair, then Mother Knows Best. It's kind of like Vanish. It's like just you have the option. Doesn't matter when you play it or where you play it. Or the Raven could play Vanish for you, and even though you're not at the location when you played it, you just have the option.
Exactly.
The same thing. This is not an optional one. You can't still move Rapunzel if you want to. This just says, nope, she's not moving. She's staying there.
Yeah.
Which,
There
again,
is no May.
There is no May.
Do or do not. There is no May.
Says Yoda Pascal.
Yeah, Yoda Pascal. That's right. The little green frog man.
Little green frog man.
Yeah. I don't think there's any other questions in chat, my friends. So if you would like to go ahead and cover the Fate deck, by all means.
Let's dive into the Fate deck. So again, Gothel is weird in the sense that she has a villain that is, or a hero rather, that is always on her realm. She is the villain.
Yeah, she is the villain.
She is the villain. But she has a hero that is always in her realm. Rapunzel never goes away. She's just there forever. However, like I mentioned briefly earlier, that does give a little bit of an advantage of in the 15-card Fate deck, there are only 7 heroes, which again is the fewest amount of heroes in any Fate deck so far. Captain Hook has 7 in addition to Peter Pan. Evil Queen has 7 in addition to Snow White. And they're sort of in that situation where once Peter Pan and Snow White are in their realm, they're not going to leave unless the game's over. But in the Fate deck initially, and even throughout the game, there's always going to be no more than 7 heroes. The rest of her Fate deck is all effects and the 1 item. So starting with the heroes, we have 4 2-strength heroes, all of which, that's not a 2-strength hero, that's the wrong one. Hook and Shorty, Pascal, and Wolf, all of which can be taken out with a Royal Guard very easily. All of them have pretty negative effects towards Mother Gothel, though. Pascal says that whenever Rapunzel moves to Pascal's location, he just says, get away from me, and bounces her 1 location towards Corona. So if she's at Corona, you play Egomania, you vanquish, she goes to the tower, Pascal says, nope, and goes to the forest. Pascal's at the forest, and you end your turn. Rapunzel moves to the forest, Pascal says, nope, and you move to Corona. So Pascal screws you over and makes you a turn behind with Rapunzel getting closer to Corona. So he is not somebody you like having in your realm. I've seen this question in Discord before. What happens if Pascal is in Corona? Kind of like Mother Knows Best, it does nothing. If she is in Corona and she moves there, she doesn't lose a trust. She just stays there with Pascal. That's the only situation where they will just hang out together. I will say Pascal's effect is only when Rapunzel moves to Pascal's location and not the other way around. So if you are here, you move Pascal with the Royal Guard, Rapunzel doesn't move. If you are here, you move Rapunzel with the Royal Guard, she does move, and she doesn't stay there. So keep in mind that it is only when Rapunzel moves to Pascal's location not when Pascal moves to Rapunzel's location. Either way, though, still very annoying. So you don't want Pascal in your realm. Moving allies. Ulf says allies can't be moved from their location. Ulf is here, and you want to go with the whole, hey, move them away from the tower with the royal guard. Can't do that because Ulf lets you not move allies. Or again, if Ulf is at Corona, you want to move Rapunzel away and save yourself a turn. Sorry, you can't do that because of Ulf. His ability sort of negates the royal guard's ability of shuffling around heroes, which makes them very annoying. So again, Ulf is not someone you want to have around. Hookhand is somebody that has just an on-play effect. So Hookhand is just an ordinary hero that sits around, but once he's played, Mother Gothel discards a random card from her hand. And now the way that I will often do it to discard a hand, if an opponent plays Hookhand on me or I'm playing Hookhand on an opponent, what I will do is if I have a hand of 4 cards, I'm just going to draw 4 royal guards, so they're all the same. What I will often do is people have mentioned that sometimes people will have the leftmost card is one they've been holding on to the most, so it's not fair for an opponent just to grab one out. So you have 2 options, one of which I used to do, but now I don't anymore, is you can flip your cards, grab them out, group them together, shuffle it up, and just take the top card. Surprise, it's Royal Guard. The other way that I find much simpler is if you select your opponent's hand, or the opponent can select your hand, just drawing a box in TTS around the hand, it will select the cards. And then if you press R, just like you're shuffling a deck, it will just shuffle and move the cards around for you. Makes life easier. Shuffle around the cards in your hand and then let your opponent just pull one out. Does the same thing. So then you don't have to do the whole flip over and group and shuffle and put them back in your hand. Just select the box around the cards, shuffle them up, and let your opponent just take one. Hookhand can be very hit or miss because he can take out a card you were just going to discard anyway, or he could take out something you were ready to play, like the Stabbing Tin, or sadly, it's happened to me before, Hookhand has discarded the brush. I've had a game as Gothel where the brush was at the bottom of the deck, and I finally got it in my hand, and then good old Hookhand comes out and says, nope, you're not having that brush.
Ooh. Oh, that hurts.
And that did hurt. And it was a weird game. I ended up winning that game, but never getting any trust from the brush. Because Hookhand discarded it, and then it went back to the bottom of the deck again on the reshuffle. And so that just, yeah, you got to think of creative ways. I love you most, misdirection, revenge, using the crown. I think in that situation, I might have used what once was mine to get back I love you most, to really maximize it, whatever it might be. But Hookhand can be hit or miss. He can either move you and he can take out a card that hurts you, or he just gives you a free discard. You never know. But either way, the chance can just be rough. Hookhand is sort of like a weaker Woodland Creatures. Woodland Creatures lets you choose, but there's no hero that's played. Hookhand is a hero and the potential for a Woodland Creatures type effect where you just get something gone from your hand. Shorty is the other 2-strength hero in Gothel's Fate deck, and Shorty again has just an immediate win plate effect. When Shorty is played, he's kind of like Max in Ursula's realm. When Shorty is played to Mother Gothel's location, you may move Mother Gothel anywhere. If Shorty is played anywhere else, doesn't matter. He's just a hero that sits there. But if he is played to the forest, you get to move Mother Gothel. And again, it can be situational. If you're in a situation where Rapunzel's here, you're playing against Gothel, and you see that Rapunzel's there with a Stabbing Tin. She was just at the Snuggly Duckling, and she's getting ready. You have a feeling she might have I love you most come and vanquish. You can play Shorty and say, guess what? I'm going to move you to the tower. So now you can't vanquish Rapunzel. You can't play that combo card, and you got to figure out a way to move her away from the tower without vanquishing. Otherwise, you lose a trust. So understanding how to play Gothel will help you understand how to play Shorty and know whether you want to move Rapunzel, if you do, how that could really screw you over. I've seen situations where where Shorty was here, and Gothel had just come here to Fate, and the other opponents at their win condition, they play Shorty, cover up that Fate, move you to the Fate spot so you also can't Fate, and now I can't Fate you, and you've just won the game. So Shorty can be really clutch in those situations where he can wreck your combos, he can stop you from fading, stop you from pulling off your plans. But again, that's only if he's played to your location. But even still, just like Hookhand, he's one of those where it may not be that bad, but but sometimes it can be really bad. There's only one 3-strength hero in the Fate deck, and that is Maximus. Maximus' ability is if there is a Royal Rider in your realm, which the odds are there may not be because there's only 2 in your whole deck. But if there's a Royal Rider in the realm, you get to move him to any location, if played to that location. So if you play Maximus to the Royal Rider's location, you can shuffle him in one of the corners. Same thing. If the Royal Rider's here getting ready to kill Rapunzel, you can move him wherever you want. Typically, you're going to want to move him to the corners anyways, because that negates his adjacent ability. If you move him anywhere else, move him over 1. Oh, look, I can still kill you. Same thing. If he's here, you move him over 1, he's still in range. So typically, Maximus will want to move the Royal Riders to the corners to make them less versatile. Otherwise, if there's no Royal Rider, Maximus is just a stronger hero that cannot be taken by a Royal Guard alone. The Royal Guard can take out any of these other 2-strength heroes, but not Maximus. So if you're trying to block the tower, Maximus is usually a good way to do it, because then you have to play a Royal Rider or at least 2 Royal Guards or Royal Guard and a knife to get rid of Maximus. However, Maximus can be taken out by duplicity. That's always the best way to utilize it if you can, is take out the most expensive hero. Maximus is the only 3-strength hero in the deck. The other 2 heroes, other than Rapunzel, who is always around, are Flynn Rider and the Queen and King. Both of these heroes not only are 4-strength, so they are the hardest to kill, but they make you lose trust. Queen and King make you lose trust directly if played to Rapunzel's location. So if the Queen and King are played to Rapunzel's location, immediately just lose a trust. And then from that point on, they're just a really expensive hero that's just squatting in your realm. Sometimes, again, situationally, it's best to make them lose the trust, but sometimes you might want to block a difficult location, don't lose a trust, but making it so that if they vanquish, they can't bait you and limiting their options. The other 4-strength hero is the good old Here Comes the Smolder, Flynn Rider. Now, Flynn Rider, I think, is actually not as bad as people tend to give him credit.
Oh my God.
Or tend to think he is. Flynn Rider, when played, borrows 2 trust. He's kind of like Little John, except the trust is not placed on him like the power would be with Prince John, but he just steals 2 trust. You just lose it. And then when you defeat him, you gain it right back. So unlike Queen and King is kind of like clever disguise. You just take the trust / power and it's not coming back. Flynn Rider is kind of like steal from the rich. You take the power for now, but it will come back. So you're not losing anything, you're just borrowing it for now. So if Rapunzel is at, or if Mother Gothel rather, is at 8 trust, at 9, you play Flynn, she loses 2, but as soon as she defeats Flynn, she gets 2 back. If she defeats Flynn using a revenge, you get an extra trust back, and you're almost giving Gothel an extra trust by giving her somebody that could be killed with revenge. Another reason I think Flynn is not as good is, and this kind of gets into the mind games component of it, if Gothel is, let's say, at 6 trust, you play Flynn, and now I lose, or the opponent's like, oh, okay, I just played Flynn. Now Gothel doesn't have that much she has to deal with. But let's say you go to the forest, you have the brush out, you have enough power where you can then play a Stabbington, you then play a Revenge, you get your 2 trust back, get 1 from Revenge, move the trust. Suddenly you just swung a whole bunch of trust and it's almost win condition for you. Your opponent thought they could ignore you because Flynn sort of messed with their own perception of thinking you don't have as much trust. But as soon as you defeat him, it comes right back. Then you could potentially even get another one with Revenge. So as much as Flynn is so tempting because he's the only card that negates more than 1 trust, you're not losing it. You're just borrowing the trust. So again, he could just sit there and block stuff. He's most valuable when you're at win condition or getting close to it to keep you away from 10. But towards the beginning of the game, especially if Mother Gothel has no trust, if Flynn comes out with, like, let's say an aging and there's no items to discard and Flynn has to be played, you're essentially giving free trust because he can't lose 2 trust, but he will still gain it. You'll still gain it when you defeat Flynn. So early Flynn is not the best because it's free trust. Towards the middle, Flynn is maybe not the best because it is getting trust that will come right back with Revenge. Towards the end is really the best time when you want to play Flynn to get Gothel away from that win condition, but also knowing that keep an eye on how quickly Flynn will die, because that can come right back to bite you. So that is all the heroes in Gothel's Fate deck. The interesting thing, like I mentioned, is there are only 7, which is the fewest in any 15-card Fate deck of any villain. The rest of her deck are 7 items and 7 effects and 1 item. The 1 item is Frying Pan. Frying Pan is attached to a hero, and that hero gets +1 strength until they are defeated. If the frying pan is placed on Rapunzel, then as soon as she is vanquished or defeated, it is discarded. If you play a Stabbington and move her to the tower, it is not discarded. But if she comes back here and you vanquish her with the Stabbington goes away, she goes to the tower, then the frying pan leaves. Now, the frying pan doesn't have to be placed on Rapunzel. As much as it is thematic to give her her frying pan, he doesn't have to take it. Oftentimes, the frying pan is most helpful on, let's say, Flynn, to keep that trust. Or let's say Pascal is in Rapunzel ruining her day. Hey, give him a frying pan to protect himself. That way the Royal Guard can't take it out, and you're going to need to use a Royal Rider or 2 Royal Guards. So oftentimes, one of the ways to hurt Mother Gothel is by putting the frying pan on a different hero that makes it harder to defeat. Or let's say Maximus is here with the frying pan, blocking Corona. Suddenly, Duplicity can't take him out anymore. Suddenly, the Royal Rider can't take him out anymore. He's a little bit harder to get rid of. The frying pan is the 1 item in the deck. Again, it's gone as soon as that hero is vanquished, but it can make heroes really challenging to vanquish. The rest of her Fate deck is all effects. There are 3 copies of Everybody Has a Dream. So in her 15-card Fate deck, there are 4 ways to lose trust and 1 way to borrow it. Queen and King can make you lose a trust if played to the location, and this just straight up makes you lose 1 trust. So if you're at 10 trust, only 5 cards can stop you. If Flynn is in the discard, Queen and King's already in the board, then your opponent has to play Everybody Has a Dream. And especially if it comes out at the same time as like an Aging or a Floating Lights or a Pascal or somebody who's going to wreck your day, they have to play it because they have to stop you. Sort of like with Hades. If you're at win condition and Hera and Pegasus are gone, they're going to have to play a Gospel Truth or, not Gospel Truth, a Lightning Bolt or Go the Distance. They can't put a hero at Mount Olympus, meaning you can still go there and move in Fate. So when you get towards your win condition and they want to take trust, unless it's Queen or King, or unless they're borrowing it with Flynn, their only way is to, again, make that tough decision, like we were talking about earlier, of having to steal the trust rather than playing something that will slow you down or hurt you. So she has 3 copies of Everybody Has a Dream, 2 copies of Aging, which again can discard anything in her realm other than a Stabbington. So the crown, the hairbrush, the knife, Royal Rider, or the Royal Guard. What will really hurt the most with Aging, other than probably discarding the brush or the crown, is if you have a Royal Rider or a Royal Guard, and one of them has the knife is attached to that ally. So if you discard the Royal Rider, the knife goes with him, and you're discarding essentially 2 cards in the realm. And that wastes the 3 power that Gothel had to spend on those, and now there's nobody strong enough to kill Rapunzel. One thing I will point out is that a Royal Rider with a knife or a Stabbington are strong enough to kill everybody, even if they have a frying pan. Nobody is more than 4 strength. So even the 4-strength heroes, if given frying pan, both Stabbingtons are 5 strength, and a Royal Rider with a knife is 5 strength as well too. So again, that knife can be really helpful, even if you're not using it on Rapunzel. It can just give you that little extra boost to kill Flynn or kill somebody else where the crown is to get that trust. So, but Aging, again, you want to force your opponents to make decisions. So if you have, the brush and some allies out there, they're probably going to be tempted to go for the brush, but you're still set up to be able to mitigate, move Rapunzel, or even vanquish if you want. So make sure that you are taking advantage of when Aging is played. Also keeping in mind, if you see early on in the game, one of the Aging comes out, maybe it's the first Fate and it does nothing and it's a Fate whiff, there's only 1 copy of it left, and then you can be less afraid to play the knife on an ally or play the crown or play the brush. Again, situational awareness is something that's so key in this game, is understanding not only what's going to help you, but what's coming up that could hurt you. So when the Agings are gone and out of the way until the deck reshuffles, that's a good signal on when you should play your items or your allies. And again, vice versa, if you're halfway through your Fate deck and you still haven't seen an Aging, nah, it's maybe not the best time to play a brush because you could get that trust this turn, but within a fade or two, it's not going to last very long. So being situationally aware of the agings will help you understand when you want to play some of your optimal items. Last effect is Floating Lights. Floating Lights does the opposite of Egomania. It just straight up yoinks her to Corona and says, if you don't move at the end of before the end of your turn, you're going to lose a trust. So it doesn't matter where she is, he just straight up moves her to Corona. And again, this can be a situational card. If Rapunzel is already at Corona, this cannot be played. And the other card has to be played. If the other one can't be played, it's a dead fate draw. But this can really hurt Rapunzel, or Gothel rather, if you're in a situation where, let's see, you know Rapunzel's here and you think Gothel was about to move her, you then move her to Corona, and now you're in a situation where, now that sort of messed up the plan that you saw coming of what was going to happen. The Floating Lights can be really situational, but it can really hurt Gothel if it messes up her plans. One thing I will say is going back to just strategy in general, one of the best ways that I like to play Gothel is to avoid gaining trust if I can. If I have a really great hand, then maybe I'll just start gaining trust. But typically, even if I have trust cards that I could play early, I'll typically still play allies and avoid gaining trust. Why? Because half of your fate deck is going to be pretty negligible if you have no trust. If someone moves you to Corona, well, I have no trust to lose, so I don't care if she's sitting there. Someone gets Everybody Has a Dream. Well, this card does nothing because I have no trust to lose. Somebody plays Aging. Oh, well, there's not much trust stuff out to get rid of anyway. And so they're going to be much more likely to get a dead fate draw. Because, again, there's only 7 heroes, more than half your deck, 8 cards here are non-heroes. And all of these, other than the Frying Pan, maybe the Agings, depending if you have allies out, but these 5 cards will essentially do nothing. If you have trust, let's say you have 2 trust, then now you've given somebody something to play. Oh, wait a minute. I could actually take a trust from you now. Oh, wait a minute. I could move you to Corona and make you have to rethink your plans and potentially lose a trust. But if you don't have trust early, you focus on just gaining power, gaining resources, playing out some allies, positioning yourself in the spot where you have some options. Then at this point, this card does nothing. This card doesn't matter. And if anything, it has you there just ready for you to kill with the setup. Once you get an I Love You Most or get in a position where you feel ready to vanquish, then you vanquish and you start gaining trust. Or maybe you draw a knife and you get a knife, and then next turn you can go there and vanquish and get a trust and play a trust card to continue to gain stuff. But early on, what I see too many people doing as a mistake playing Gothel is they are just going for it. They're saying, all right, first turn, go to the forest, let down your hair. I'm going to get a trust. Or first turn, I'm going to play a misdirection. Same thing. I'm going to get a trust. Rapunzel moves, and then she moves there. Then you're in a situation where this card will hurt you. It'll take the trust. This card will hurt you. You'll be at Corona where you have to either move or lose that trust, and you're forced to think through some different options. If you don't have trust in your first few turns, you're much more flexible in what you can do. So you're sort of already giving yourself fewer options by just going for the trust right away. If you're at Corona with no trust, you don't have to play that game yet. Like I mentioned, Mother Gothel is playing 2 games. She's gaining trust, focusing on getting to 10, but she's also mitigating Rapunzel. So why start playing both games right from the get-go when you can just focus on one game, setting yourself up to get trust later on? Then once you're ready to start taking swings, then you start gaining your trust, vanquish or move Rapunzel, start getting some trust, then your second game triggers. But if you just jump into it like I see most people do, then you're already playing both games. Get trust as fast as I can while also keeping Rapunzel away from Corona, and then you're already behind. So if you can play more defensively, either fading more often to sort of set up a situation where you feel more comfortable, or even if you don't need to fade and just start to gain power, maybe only play a card here, gain some power, play a card here, gain a bunch of power, play a 2 card here. Oh, suddenly you now have some resources. And even if these spots are covered and you want to go fate, you can now bounce between these spots and have the resources to play stuff. So don't be anxious to get trust. I see Gothel as very similar to Maleficent in the way that a lot of people mess up playing Mal by just deciding, I'm going to speed run it and try to get as many curses out as fast as I possibly can. And that sometimes can work, but it often doesn't. But I've seen really, really dangerous, hard to beat Mals where you just take your time. You set up defensively, you play some allies, you don't worry about curses too much, because then Once Upon a Dream is not going to hurt you. The 4 strength heroes aren't going to get rid of Force of Thorns, they're not going to hurt you. Then once you're in a position where you feel good about it, you just start plopping out curses, and then within a couple turns, you can be at 2 to 3, maybe even 4 curses. Same thing. You're no trust. You take a few turns to set up, get where you need to be. Just ignore this game. Ignore the keeping Punzo away from Corona game. Just focus on getting set up. Take some time to play it slow, play it patient. Then you can get to a position where it's like, all right, suddenly I vanquish Royal Guard with the knife, and it's vanquished. I get a trust. I play I love you most. I get 3 more. Next turn, I'm coming to the forest. I'm playing a brush. I'm getting a trust. I'm playing misdirection. I'm getting a trust. I'm moving it. I'm getting a trust. I just got 6 trust in 2 turns. And then I still had another ally that was here that I prepped that I was ready to vanquish. Next turn, I can come here and play another guard and vanquish. And then you can get in a position where you can really get rolling. And especially knowing your fate deck is not going to slow down the trust gain all that much. Because again, only 1/3 of your fate cards can do anything about your trust, especially if you can observe where the fate deck is at and understand that it's not going to hurt you in the way you think it will. That's when in a position where you just got to be patient. Take your time, set up, do what you need to do, and then know when the right time is to pounce. I've seen it work the other way, where sometimes people are too patient and they just are in a position where it's the end of the game and they're at like 9 power and 4 trust because they didn't go for the trust gain soon enough. So most of the time it's the other way around. You end the game at like 6 trust and no power. You have no resources and you're out of gas. But sometimes if you play it too patient, then you're at the end game where you just spend all game playing patient while the other player, especially if there's someone faster like Rad or Doctor or maybe even Captain Hook, you're not going to be able to keep pace with it. So you got to understand when the right time is to start gaining trust. To me, I typically see that as being around turn 3 to 6. 3 is even still maybe a little bit early, but maybe around turn 4, 5, or 6 is when you start gaining trust and start moving. But if you take a few turns to get resources, to get power, to just start discarding heavily, one of my strategies for Gothel is I am not afraid to discard. If I have an opening hand of I love you most, Royal Guard, and like let's say misdirection and a Royal Rider, and maybe I come here, I go to the Snuggly Duckling, spend 2 on a Royal Rider and 1 on a Royal Guard, and I'm discarding these 2 trust cards. They're great cards, but I don't need them right now. I have another copy that I can get back later, or if I really, really need to, I can get it back with what once was mine later on. But if you're not going to play it, don't hold on to it. The mistake I see too many people making is they're like, oh, but I really want to play Revenge, and I know I have no heroes that I can kill yet, but I want to be able to get a trust and use it. And then it becomes 4 or 5 turns till you get a hero, and that card is just sitting in your hand doing nothing. So that's just my personal villainous strategy in general, but especially with Gothel, is that don't be afraid to discard heavy. I know that's a strategy that Cincinnatus recommends with Yzma too. She has a lot of great tools, but if you aren't going to use them, don't be afraid to discard them.
Yep.
It's very, I think, like Cincinnatus mentioned in his deep dive, Yzma her effects are very phasey, where you play them in certain phases. You tend to want to play Smash with the Hammer a lot early, after them a lot end game. Same thing. You're probably going to play I Love You Most, Misdirection, Revenge, end game. Not that close to the beginning. So if you're not going to use them, don't be afraid to get rid of them. And yeah, I think that is the last thing I'll mention is the locations. I know we should have talked about that at the beginning, most likely, but Gothel's realm is weird. She has 2 locations. I'm pretty sure she's the only villain with this situation where she has 2 locations with 3 actions on the bottom of her realm. And especially when it comes to her fate locations, like I mentioned earlier, for Punzel or another heroes at Corona, you're not going to be able to get power going to these fate locations. So having resources, having power, because again, everything except now on bad guy is going to cost you at least 1 power to play. Going here to get power is important. Don't feel like because you have 2 card plays, you have to use them. If I'm at Snuggly Duckling, oh, I have 3 power and I have 2 card plays, so I'm just going to spend all my power and use the cards. If you have cards you know you want to play, great. But don't be afraid to just go to a Snuggly Duckling. Just play a Royal Guard, save that 2 power, maybe discard some stuff. Don't be afraid. I've gone to the forest. I don't have anything I want to play, but I'm just going to get 2 power, move Rapunzel. Next turn, I have 4 power. And then I can come here and then play a stabbing turn and then fate and do what I need to do. But getting the power and even just choosing not to play cards can be helpful. Again, you want to play it situationally, know where you're at, know what you're playing with, and know just what's coming up in your deck. I know card counting can kind of be a really advanced, strategy to think about, but she has almost, except with the exception of the crown, hairbrush, and knife, she has at least 2 copies of almost every card. So know that, like, hey, and 5 of the Royal Guard, of course. So know that, hey, if I need to move Rapunzel, I haven't seen any Let Down Your Hairs, I'm going to have that coming up soon. Or I want to get Trust, but I haven't seen I Love You Most yet. That should be coming up within the next couple of draws. Don't bank on it, because sometimes you can get in weird situations where I've had it. The bottom 5 cards of my deck were these cards. And that just made me have to really go for some different strategies and rethink. So you can't rely on, oh, I know I'm going to draw it and it's definitely going to come up. Odds are in your favor. But as you know, in a card game, sometimes the cards just aren't in your favor. In the words of the doctor, the cards will tell.
I was
Sometimes
literally about to say that.
Fortune is not on your side.
I was literally about to say it.
I beat you to it.
Yeah, I know you did. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Right
I have
your
a
mouth.
question. I actually have a question
Okay.
for you. Now, this is coming from the opponent fading you side of things. So I know there's obviously certain circumstances like Queen and King, possibly Ulf, but is there ever a time, like an actual time? Because I've noticed this when playing against Gothel, and this is something I'm trying to figure out. Is there ever a time you really want to play a hero to the Snuggly Duckling or the Forest? I can, because like for obvious circumstances, yeah, Queen and King get played at Rapunzel's location. Ulf might get played at a location where there's a royal guard that's going to be useful. And then like maybe these other heroes, you don't want to play them to locations where there are allies. But I mean, like in general, like let's say it's even like the starting turn of the game or something like that, or first like 2 or 3 turns. Is there ever any reason to play them to the Snuggly Duckling or the Forest?
I
At all?
think Gothel can be kind of like Scar. I mean, and as a Scar main, it's like you typically
Yes.
want to cover the Savannah and then the Gorge first, and you want to go for the Fate locations. And so you're not usually going to play to, the Graveyard or Pride Rock, even though there's the nice combo spots. The Fate combo spots, especially early on, where especially Gothel, knowing she wants to play more defensive, can be more valuable. So in general, starting from the game, yes, usually a hero is going to want to go on one of the corner spots. However, keeping in mind that what Gothel wants to do is set up and scare you away from playing heroes there, just like Scar. He's going to put heroes at the Gorge. He's going to put people at the Savannah. So maybe if you have Flynn coming out and you want to steal some trust, and I have 2 Royal Guards here, well, I'm not going to put him there because he's just going to die. Or
Right.
Pascal is here. I want him here to stop you from going to the tower, but he's not going to last that much longer there.
He gonna die.
He gon' die. Same thing with the crown. The crown is another sort of defense mechanism where you say, okay, go ahead and play the heroes to the tower for me, and I'll just bang trust off of them as soon as I kill them. Or same thing, like play him to Corona, mess up my top power and discard spot. Like I'm happy to gain from them being there, because with revenge, with duplicity, with 9 allies in my deck, they're not going to last very long. So using the crown in your allies as a way to sort of force heroes into the middle. Oftentimes, like I mentioned, you can use the Royal Guard to shuffle people there anyway. So it's more so just, again, situationally. Think, again, if there's an ally at Rapunzel's tower, Pascal might be better at the Snuggly Duckling or at the Forest, so that as soon as Rapunzel leaves the tower, she's already almost at Corona. Or as soon as she leaves the Snuggly Duckling, she is already at Corona. So it just comes down to situationally. Generally speaking, just like with most villains, I think it can be more valuable to make it more annoying for them to play defense, cover up some of their fate spots. But if those spots are covered, if you feel like those spots are not going to come back soon, or if you want to mess up their combo spots, then yeah, by all means. Or again, if they have defense where they are ready to get rid of, mitigate heroes there, feel free to play them in the combo spots.
I got you. I guess my biggest thing, because as a Scar player, but like what's kind of weird very weird looking at Gothel's realm. Besides a little bit of shuffling of stuff around in terms of like what's on top and what's on bottom, they literally have the same realm
Yeah,
location actions,
same actions.
same exact different spots from top to bottom, and and obviously different from left to right, but same exact stuff. Like
Yep.
so, but the only difference is the fact that the forest and the duckling only have one action at the top. So I didn't know if you've seen as even especially as playing Mother Gothel, like even if those situations come up, like obviously Pascal makes perfect sense. Like Rapunzel's here, you know that Rapunzel's gonna get probably moved. So it's like, oh, that makes sense because rather than playing it here, I can actually now slow it down even more. I can accelerate that. Do you find that Mother Gothel really gets hurt by having that being covered up, or do you really think that's it in a weird way because she has every location has a card play spot at the bottom? Do you think that doesn't really affect her that much?
It doesn't affect her that much, but I will say not being able to combo cards can be really annoying.
Okay.
So especially if you like, oh, have a what once is mine, you can play it, get something back, and immediately play it. Or if you can combo playing the hairbrush and using misdirection and then moving the brush. Or if you can go to Snuggly Duckling, you have a power, you can then get 3 and you can spend 1 to play a Stabbington and 1 to play a knife, so the next turn you have it and ready to vanquish. It really depends on what's in her hand, and it does make it more annoying. I will say with Rapunzel moving around, she typically is not going to stay here, and she almost never stays here. So Rapunzel is usually in one of these locations anyway. And so knowing that she's usually going to be chilling for the most part in one of these two spots means you're not usually going to have heroes there. So a lot of times Rapunzel is probably going to be here or here, and then you're like, oh, I just want to cover these spots, and that's just
Okay.
she's going to do that work for you annoyingly.
Okay.
Yeah,
Interesting.
but it's situational. It's situational. If you
Okay.
know that, like, okay, this is a good combo spot for Mother Gothel, and you're maybe going to try to move somebody, maybe Wolf is going to go there. Or same thing, like if Gothel's here and you want to move her, yes, play Shorty there so that you can move her and stop a Vanquish or stop a Fate or whatever it is. Like,
Okay.
I think they specifically designed like even Queen and King and Shorty to be more tempting to play towards the middle location, since that's maybe where Gothel or Rapunzel will be, to make it more tempting to not put them. Or same thing with Maximus. If a Royal Rider
Right.
is in the
Exactly.
middle, which he usually will be, like it's situational. It's how you want to play it. But as both, the baiting player and as the villain yourself, you want to know how you can force your opponent to make those decisions. If you're just going too fast, then the decisions kind of get made pretty easily, where it's like, all right, you're just
Yep.
blazing cards out. Let's just stop
Absolutely.
your combo spots. Or maybe they're playing more defensively. Let's slow down your defense. You can't fade as much. Do what you have to do.
Okay.
But that is,
Okay.
I think I
I like that.
covered
Thank
everything.
you. That helps me
Were there
understand
any
this
more
better.
questions from the chat or any more
Yeah.
questions from you? Or
Chat,
anything else I
ask your
didn't touch on?
questions now or forever be lost in the sauce. I'm treating you like my students. Or else you have to wait a whole week and wait till Sunday night when you're doing your homework.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, exactly. I think this is really good. I think you definitely taught me a thing or two. I definitely want to actually give this character another run for her money in a competitive sense. I really like this character. I really like the way she plays. I tell people that I like Hades because Hades kind of plays the same way, but he's a little bit more straightforward. Mother Gothel's a little bit more complex, but the complexity I find more enjoyable from a playing standpoint. So I definitely want to give her more of a shot because I once I figured out Hades, I really wanted to kind of get back into Gothel, but I just never did. Because you can only try to maximize how well you play characters with so many characters in a small period of time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You
It does
can't have
not
everybody
seem.
be your main.
I know you can't. Yeah, I know. I can't have everyone be my Scar, except for Doctor. But it does not seem like we have any other questions. So I just like to
All right.
say before we end this little segment here, thank you for coming on, Zach. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has absolutely been a pleasure. You've done a really good job explaining yourself and everything. I think, um, if anything, I just hope that this all encourages everyone here to start playing more Mother Gothel, whether you're playing in our Wicked League or you're playing not part of the league and you're just playing for fun with your friends. I hope I get to hear more about people playing Mother Gothel in the near future. So
And I will say, to kind of close it out, I'll say that the best way to practice with Gothel or any other villain is to do that, is to practice. And I can tell
Practice.
you exactly what you need to do, how to play the cards, what cards to play better, how to fate, how to use your fate deck to your advantage. But you learn from experience. Kind of like to use the classic example of, I could tell you exactly how to ride a bike, but until you get on the bike and you start pedaling and you fall down and you get back up again, like that is how you learn and that is how you get good. So I
Exactly.
know you and I were talking about this earlier about you playing with Scar. Like you had to get your
Yep.
butt kicked for a month or so before you got really good at it. Same thing
Yep.
with Gothel. Like hopefully this helps speed up your process. It's kind of like
Yep.
taking a bike course versus just learning on your own. It will
Mm-hmm.
help you learn faster, but you still have to put in the work to learn. So if you want to get good with this character or any character, hop on TTS, go to the Discord, jump in the matchmaking channel, get some matches, and play your game.
Play some games. That's the most important thing, is to make sure that you are playing this game. That is the most important
And
part.
then you will win big.
Yeah, win big, but probably not with Pete. Definitely not with Pete.